I have literally been calling for this day for years on this show. It has finally happened. The New York Mets have extended Jeff McNeil on a very team-friendly contract that will keep him in Queens through the 2026 season. We're going to discuss this new deal on this special edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, the Mets extend Jeff McNeil, the batting title champion, to a 4-year, $50 million deal with a club option that could take him to $63.25 million in guaranteed money over that 5-year span. They buy out his final 2 years of arbitration and his first 3 years of free agency, essentially, with that club option. This is an amazing deal for the Mets and really harkens back to a lot of shows that we had throughout the offseason, particularly my most recent one discussing Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso and why Jeff McNeil should be the one prioritized in extension talks. The reason being is because this is a team-friendly deal that you could come to that makes a lot of sense, that keeps him under control, and the Mets had so much more leverage with Jeff McNeil. McNeil to reach free agency, I mean, considering his age, obviously 2 years left, not having the big home run stats that help inflate your arbitration numbers, he was set to not make too much money over the next 2 seasons, whereas Pete Alonso is already starting to break the bank because he has the stats that are awarded throughout the arbitration process. You've almost waited too long on Pete because now he's in a position where he can still make a healthy chunk of change in the next 2 years and then hit free agency and get a ginormous bag. And you almost have to bet against him in a way where you wonder if you're going to get that much better deal if you sign him now as opposed to if you signed him in a couple of years. Jeff McNeil is the complete opposite. You should sign him now because you had the leverage, and if you didn't, and if you just kept him cheap for the next 2 seasons, he would hit free agency looking to get paid. Whoever would be the highest bidder would get him, and that bidding could have escalated past a point where maybe you don't like the numbers you ultimately come up with. Had the Mets been in a position to extend Brandon Nimmo a couple years ago, maybe they would have a better contract on the books than the one they signed him to. Not that I think that's a bad deal, but you just run the risk of having to pay a little bit more if the guys hit the open market. And obviously with Nimmo, you had to make sure he could prove health. He did that this past season, and he was rewarded. With Jeff McNeil, he just proved, coming off of that down year in 2021, that he is still the guy that can go out and win a batting title, as he just did that. And what he brings to this team as far as a positional fit, it's unmatched on the roster. Like, he is this cog that allows you to build whatever team you can imagine. If you are going to sign a Carlos Correa, for example, this offseason, Jeff McNeil makes that move a little more feasible because you know that you could always slide him into left field if you need to get Eduardo Escobar time at second base or anybody else some run in the infield. You know that if the Mets, end up in a position a couple years from now where Starling Marte is coming off the books and they need another outfielder to join Brandon Nimmo out there, McNeil's always the guy that can do that. Meanwhile, he's arguably the second best second baseman in baseball right now behind Jose Altuve. When I'm ranking our top 10 second basemen for just baseball, that is where I put him on the list, just behind Altuve, because he is that impactful with the bat and because the glove is really good at the position as well. So to get McNeil locked up is massive for this Mets team. You just project forward and you feel a lot better knowing that he is, on the books at a reasonable deal, and it's just one less thing you have to worry about. You have him penciled in at second base now for at least the next 4 seasons. You have the flexibility to move him around if you had to. It's just some peace of mind for sure that moving forward, you now have a core of McNeil, Lindor, and Nimmo. Marte, still 3 years of control. Alonso, 2 years. But, this team just now going into the future, you feel a little bit more confident in their ability to kind of sustain this success, having an all-star level player on this type of a deal. I want to really think about the future a little bit more and also dive into the contract a little bit compared to what I was projecting. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. We are really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better because they have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers can join today to get $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment matter with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. When it comes to the numbers behind Jeff McNeil's contract, right now all that has been released as I'm recording this is that it's a 4-year, $50 million deal with a 5th-year option that could take it to $63.25 million. I imagine there's probably some incentives baked in for awards, batting titles, World Series, All-Stars potentially. We'll see if any of that stuff is worked into the language of the deal. We'll see if there's a no-trade clause, any of that fun stuff. But when we look at the contract that I pitched, it's kind of interesting because I wasn't too far off, but the Mets get an even better deal. I thought that he would get a $70 million contract over 5 years, although the breakdown of that I said was basically like a 5-year, $60 million deal with $5 million as a signing bonus, $5 million as a buyout on a 6-year option. So essentially, I was looking at about $12 million per. You look at what he gets here over that. That's my dad calling, literally. I'm going to leave that ringtone in there. That's him calling probably. Jeff McNeil, extension. You know what? Why don't we put him on speaker? Hey, Dad. Dad, you're on Locked On Mets. You fired up?
Jeff McNeil?
Yeah. Jacked up?
I'm jacked up, man.
Yeah, I'm recording live. I just answered the phone on speaker and put you on speaker.
Hey, fans out there, how you doing? I'm jacked up for Jeff McNeil. What a great move. And true to the podcast last week, Ryan called it pretty close on the numbers. Good job.
Thank you. You know what? Great transition, Dad. I'll call you when I'm done. That's right where I was at. I was breaking down the numbers that I projected and then the numbers that he ultimately got. So I'm going to hang up on you here and I'll call you after the show, Dad.
Sounds great.
All right. So anyway, that was a nice little guest we had, special guest star, my dad. Basically, though, as I was kind of alluding to, the breakdown I have is about $12 million. You look at 4 for 50, that's $12.5 million per. And I was looking at over 5 years, about $65 million. He gets $63.75. So that's exactly why I wanted the Mets to sign to this extension. They were able to leverage his free agency to the point where they didn't even need to guarantee that 5th year. I imagine they will end up picking up that club option unless McNeil falls off a cliff. So you feel really good about the fact that the control is there. Maybe from Jeff McNeil's perspective, you get some guaranteed money in your bank account. His career earnings, I'll look it up. I think he was at like $6 million or something in his entire career up to this point. So, if you compare that to what he just guaranteed, it's a no-brainer for him. This is a guy that wants to secure that wealth. He has 2 All-Star appearances under his belt, and he was only estimated to make $6.5 million this year, and they had not agreed to terms on that arbitration number. You look here at Spot Track, career earnings for Jeff McNeil. Again, I think it's around 6, if I'm not mistaken. But again, you now get into a point here where you sign this contract and you still have a chance. If they don't pick up the club option, you hit free agency this is age 31, 32, 33, 34. So after age 34 season, they pick it up after age 35 season. A guy like Jeff McNeil, maybe he does rake all the way through, and there's still a nice 2-year, $36 million contract for McNeil on the other side of this rainbow. But you look at his career earnings, and it was $129,811 up to this point in 5 seasons. Well, now you just, 10 times your career earnings with this contract. That's why, again, I felt like it was so imperative to negotiate now, get a deal done. Jeff McNeil, this shows that he wants to be a Met, gets to remain a Met, be part of this team into the future. And as you're looking at the pieces you have coming up through your farm system, McNeil fits in perfectly. There is not a clear-cut middle infield prospect on the horizon. Ronnie Mauricio, the only one, and we really feel like he's going to be moved into a corner. So you take him out of the mix. Jet Williams, maybe your next middle infield prospect that potentially could come up, but we still don't even know what position he's going to play. Could he be a center fielder? He's so far off that you just can't really plan for that. So there's not a clear Jeff McNeil replacement coming through the pipeline. You get him locked up. You get him locked up on a reasonable number. You have Lindor and McNeil, arguably top 3, top 5 double play combination in baseball. How high do they go? Personally, I think I put them at number 1. If you look at F4 last year, I believe they were number 1, and they, with their defensive background, really do have kind of that high floor to continue to be the best double play combination in baseball. So this is the perfect signing for this Mets team. This just continues to enhance what they've done this offseason, how much they're setting themselves up to continue to be winners. Hopefully Pete Alonso is next. I'd love to see both of these guys get extended. While I said that Jeff McNeil should be prioritized, Pete Alonso certainly deserving of a bag as well, and it'd be nice to see him locked in, cost certain, moving forward, just like they were able to do with the Flying Squirrel. But that's going to be all for this special edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show, at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by Lindsey Crosby. That's where you want to go to find out about the stars of tomorrow. You can follow Locked On MLB Prospects on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts.